Over the last 50 years, something really strange has been happening to land in the UK. It's kind of stopped being just a place to, grow food or build a home. Instead, it's transformed into a pure financial asset, with prices that have just skyrocketed, pushing it way beyond the reach of ordinary people, and even nature itself. Okay, let's dive into this wild 50-year story. To really get the scale of this, just look at this comparison. Okay, say you'd put 10 grand into a UK house back in 1975. Today, you'd have a very respectable £270,000. Not bad at all. But if you'd put that same 10 grand into what everyone called worthless Scottish hill land, well, you'd be sitting on £1.5 million. How on earth did that happen? So this chart is basically our evidence board, and it tells the whole story. You can see the two lines, housing in blue, land in green, and they just decouple. They dramatically split apart. But look closer. There are two moments that just blow this whole thing wide open. First, the introduction of a major tax relief back in the 90s, and then this recent, almost vertical explosion we're calling the carbon boom. It's insane. So how do we explain this? I mean, land prices don't just shoot up on their own, right? The source material we're looking at argues they're being pushed up by this hidden, invisible architecture of finance and government policy. So let's pull back the curtain and actually see what's going on behind the scenes. Our investigation points to four main culprits working together here. You've got a massive flood of credit, tax policies that basically act as a price support, the way subsidies get baked right into the land's value, and a planning system that seems designed to create artificial scarcity. Let's take them one by one. This quote just nails the first driver perfectly. Think about it. As banks create more and more money, all that new cash goes chasing after a fixed asset. Land. You can't make more of it, right? So its price just soaks up all that new credit. We're not really paying for the dirt and the soil anymore. We're paying for the exclusive right to own a tiny piece of a monopoly. And next up, we've got tax policy. For decades, the system has pretty much turned land into a tax haven. Take agricultural property relief, or APR. It lets you pass on land completely free of inheritance tax. Your main home is exempt from capital gains tax. And get this, if you sell timber from your land, that profit is 100% tax-free income. All of these policies create a massive incentive for wealthy people to park their cash in land, pushing prices up for absolutely everyone else. So this is really the crucial point to understand the baseline. Let's say an acre of regular old agricultural land is worth about £10,000, okay? But then, bam! The second the state grants planning permission to build on that exact same acre, its value can leap to over £1 million. Instantly. Now, this isn't value created by the landowner. It's a massive windfall created by a state-granted monopoly right. It's a perfect example of that scarcity engine at work. Just when you think prices couldn't possibly go any higher, we get this incredible modern plot twist. The global push to save the environment has, paradoxically, become the single biggest price inflator of all. Welcome to what's being called the Great Green Rush. Now, the new engine behind this whole rush is a concept called stacking. It sounds complex, but it's pretty simple. It just means a landowner can now sell multiple different environmental services from the exact same piece of land. They can sell carbon credits for sucking up CO2, they can sell biodiversity credits to developers who need to offset their impact, and they can even sell nutrient credits to offset pollution. Each one is a totally separate, stackable stream of income. Let's look at a real-world example just to see how wild this gets. So in 2015, a 50-acre plot of pretty poor grazing land, not much good for anything, was worth about 300 grand. Okay, but fast forward to today, and the potential income from selling stacked carbon and biodiversity credits from that land could make that same plot worth over £1.6 million. All of a sudden, land that was considered worthless is now way more valuable than prime farmland. And this brings us to a perfect case study, the beer company BrewDog. They bought this massive estate in Scotland for almost £9 million, and they made this big promise to plant a huge forest and make their whole business carbon negative. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect example of corporate environmentalism, right? Yeah, but the reality on the ground was a total mess. Over half of the saplings they planted just died. And what's worse, to plant them, they had to prepare the ground in a way that disturbed these carbon-rich peat soils, which ended up releasing huge amounts of stored carbon straight into the atmosphere. The whole project ended up being a net negative for the climate, at least in the short term. And the end of the story? Well, after all the negative publicity and the ecological failure, BrewDog just sold the estate. And this really highlights a key problem. You have these corporate owners who are focused on marketing and financial returns, and they often just don't have the long-term commitment that real, genuine nature restoration actually requires. So what are the actual real-world consequences of turning our land into this speculative financial game? Well, the damage report is pretty clear. It's pricing out both people and nature. For nature charities, the situation is nothing short of catastrophic. The source material calls it a purchasing power crisis. Basically, the money people donate just can't keep up with the hyperinflated price of land anymore. The numbers here are just stark. Back in 1990, a £10 million donation could have bought a massive 33,000 acres for a new nature reserve. But today, that same $10 million can barely secure 3,000 acres. The ability of these charities to actually protect our natural world has been totally decimated. To put one number on it, it's a staggering 90% collapse in what conservation charities can actually do with the money people give them. They're being completely and utterly priced out of the market by financial speculators. So who actually owns all this land? Well, this chart shows an absolutely astonishing concentration of ownership. Less than 1% of the population owns half the entire country. And all the homeowners in the UK, with all their gardens and plots combined, they own just 5%. Okay, so given all of this, the material we're drawing from concludes that small tweaks and minor reforms just aren't going to cut it. It proposes a fundamental reset, a really radical solution that is all centered on tax. The big idea is called the Great Tax Swap. Right now, our system is basically backwards. We heavily tax the things we actually want more of, like income from your work and sales from trade. And at the same time, we subsidize things we want less of, like hoarding land and polluting. The proposal is to flip that entire logic on its head. So here's how it would work in practice. You'd get rid of existing property taxes and replace them with a single annual land value tax. This immediately makes it expensive to just sit on valuable land without using it productively. It captures for the public those huge windfalls from things like planning permission, and here's the kicker. The revenue would be used to cut or maybe even get rid of taxes on our income and sales. The ultimate goal here is simple, but it's profound. It's to completely realign our economic incentives. So instead of a system that rewards monopoly and extraction, this proposal aims to create one that actually rewards productive work and promotes the health of our society and, our planet. Look, it's a radical idea for sure, and it leaves us with a pretty provocative final question. After 50 years of land acting as this engine of inequality, could taxing the value of that land monopoly instead of the fruits of our own labor finally be the answer?